All right, it is 10 o'clock and I'm going to go ahead and get started. Try to go through this quickly and painlessly. If you got questions, feel free to speak up or type them in chat. Give me a thumbs up if you can see the review sheet there. Cool. All right, so I originally was going to go through the whole sheet, and sorry, my dog is barking a lot. I was going to go through the whole sheet and answer everything, and I decided it would be better to go through and kind of answer some of them as we go, which means I may have to jump around to pull some answers together, but we'll get everything answered, and then we'll have a nice completed review sheet at the end. But the first few, I'd already done that before I changed my mind. So I left them. I'm going to type them all out anyway. The first one, if an animal that controls its body temperature by varying its position in the environment is an ectotherm. So that is, and the description of an animal that does not control its own body temperature, its body temperature is mostly regulated by the environment. These are the animals you see basking. They sit in the sun to warm up. They require kind of a kickstart of energy to get going in the morning. Amphibians, reptiles, fish will often require this little boost of energy to get going. Unlike us, the next question describes what we are. An animal that cannot control its body temperature by varying its position in its environment is an endotherm. We have our temperature regulated by metabolic processes, by all of the food fuel that we're burning all the time. That keeps us warm. Now, kind of strangely, there are some ectotherms that have kind of a way of maintaining their body heat, and that's usually the very large ectotherms. They have so much body mass that when they burn energy inside of them, it kind of holds the heat inside of their body, and so they can kind of maintain their body temperature a little bit better just by the practice of being large. There's the debate going on about whether or not dinosaurs were ectothermic or endothermic. What were they like? And studying fossil remains of the theropod dinosaurs seems to imply that there may have been a transition in some towards some kind of endothermy, the number of blood vessels they have. But some of the larger dinosaurs, just by virtue of being such a large animal, could probably maintain some body temperature even as a functional ectotherm. Third one, the Mesozoic era is the age of reptiles. We are currently in what is called the Cenozoic, which is the age of mammals. So the era that is the middle era is age of reptiles. Before that, animal life was just getting started. Amphibians kind of dominated for a while, but it was not to the extent that reptiles dominated, or to the extent now that mammals have been dominating as the dominant life form. Number 4, legless reptiles. Snakes belong to the order Squamata. The squamates is the group that includes, that includes everything from your lizards to your snakes, and that other group, the worm lizards. The worm lizards are the ones that look kind of like earthworms, amphisbaenins. Next, a 4-legged reptile that has a third eye and lacks both a shell and external ears is the Tuatara. And the Tuatara is a member of that group called the Rhynchocephalians. The third eye is basically a photosensitive spot that's on the head of many reptiles. I had a pet iguana for a long time, and they use that to kind of sense when the temperature is warming up. They can pick up infrared, and they can tell that the day is getting warmer and become more active. And if I put my finger on top of that spot on top of her head, she would close her eyes and kind of go to sleep. She would just relax and feel like she was basking, I guess. Maybe she was picking up the heat from my finger. Maybe she was not picking up light. Kind of interesting. But the tuatara doesn't have a shell. It's not testudines, and it doesn't have external ears. It doesn't have the membrane covered ears that we see in lizards. Let's see. In some chordates, pharyngeal pouches develop into slits that develop into jaws. So if you look at the pharyngeal slits, those are the things, the slits on the side of the neck, the head, that turn into gill slits in fish. We started off with jawless fish, just an open mouth, and then those slits down the side. We saw sharks that had 5 or maybe 6 or 7, depending on the species of shark, but most of them have 5 slits. We see bony fish that now the bony material, the operculum, covers up over those gill slits. And now we see, as we transition from or into jawed fish and further on, we'll see that it looks like those pharyngeal pouches that are around the slits that are where the gills would be turn into jaws. Which feature distinguishes most fishes from most amphibians? I'm going to actually correct that. I'm going to make that say most fish from most amphibians, because you can use, well, actually no, fishes, because we're talking about multiple species. I follow my own rules, sorry. Which feature distinguishes most fishes from most amphibians? Scales. Amphibians kind of have a cold, slimy skin. They still respire through their skin. They're very sensitive to external changes, chemicals, things that get on their skin. Not a problem for reptiles. Reptiles have scaly skin that's a little drier, more adapted to living on land. Dominance of amphibians during the Carboniferous period ended because of, and probably a good guess as to why any big extinction occurs. Ultimately, it's probably changing climate. Why did the dinosaurs die off and mammals take over? Changing climate. Yeah, there was an asteroid that hit the Earth. When it hit the Earth, it kicked up a huge cloud of dust. That cloud of dust cooled the surface of the planet and changed the climate. When it changed the climate, it changed what animals could live on the planet. Number 9. All right, so now I'm gonna have to actually type these up. Adaptations that helped early amphibians live life on land. So we have to think of what it is that allows them to live on land. What makes it so you can live on land? That would be, let's see, limbs, rib cage, sorry, make sure I don't have somebody trying to get into the meeting. What the heck? Why can't I view the full meeting? Oh, I know why. Because I'm still sharing. Pay attention. All right, there we go. All right, sorry. So nobody joining us. My phone, my computer chimed, so I thought it might have been somebody joining us. All right, so sorry, brain rewind. So what were the things that allowed animals to move on land? So I've got rib cage, I've got limbs. Oh, I know a big one, the shell. The shell that allows them, let's see, can't type on it, sorry. Shell that allows them to have offspring that can stay on land. Let's see. Lack of scales, because they have to be able to respire through their skin, and then transition to lungs so that they can respire internally too. All right, so underline that guy. The next one, What is mimicry? What does it mean to be a mimic? Mimicry is pretending to be another animal, gain the defensive benefits from visual predators. It could also be camouflage. Oh, cannot spell. So mimicry shows up in things like poison dart frogs. There are frogs that produce poison on their glands on their back that are deadly poisons. Hunters in some areas use them. They dip the dart in that poison on the back of the frog. Then when you shoot that dart into your prey, it paralyzes it, kills it. If you eat the frog, you got the same problem. So you eat this frog, which has a very pretty red, bright yellow, bright green color, something that stands out. So visually, you know, and it makes you very sick. The next time you see it, you're not going to want to eat it. That's mimicry. Sorry, that's coloration that goes along with a defensive mechanism. Mimicry is when there's another frog that doesn't produce the toxin that has the same coloration. Why does that benefit it? Well, because the predators that have eaten this red frog and they got sick, violently ill, the next time they see a red frog, they don't eat it. And if that red frog doesn't have any toxin, they have no way of knowing that, but visually they will recognize the red and they will avoid eating it. Let's see. What's the difference between a single loop and double loop circulatory system? Why is a double loop necessary in land animals? All right, so single loop, I'm missing my underlines. Single loop sends blood to the lungs, gills, and then the body, while double loop goes to the lungs and then returns to the heart to then be sent throughout the body. So what's the benefit to doing that in a land animal? This is required to send blood throughout the body under the effects, additional effects of gravity. So basically, it's harder to pump blood around your body if you're on land than in the water. You're fighting against gravity. You've got to get blood moving throughout your body. So this double loop allows blood to flow to pick up oxygen and then get pumped to the body. Oxygen pumped to the body, as opposed to get oxygen to the body, get oxygen to the body, get oxygen to the body, one loop. Why do the eggs of amphibians dry out so easily? They lack an external Actually, we can probably just say they lack a hard amniotic shell. All right. How are amphibian larvae and fish similar? All right, so both breathe through gills, are aquatic, what do you call amphibian larvae? Tadpoles. In which amphibian would you expect the pelvic girdle to be the least well developed? So again, to make sure we're clear on that, the pelvic girdle is the part of the pelvis that the leg muscles and bones attach to. So the group that is going to be least likely to have a well-developed pelvic girdle is going to be, I'm pasting it in, so make sure I spell it right, order Gymnophiona. The Gymnophionans are the ones that are legless, the caecilians. And so no legs, no pelvic girdle to attach legs to. All right, next, the only places on Earth where most reptiles cannot live are, let's see, near the poles due to cold temperatures. Being ectotherms, they require some amount of body temperature to come from the environment. And if it's cold all the time in the environment, you just don't see reptiles. All right, next, suppose you know that vertebrate X has lungs, lays eggs with several protective membranes. That means it's an amniote. What else would you need to know about vertebrate X to determine if it is a reptile? All right, it has lungs. That's definitely something that lives on land. It lays eggs, amniote egg. What else lays eggs and lives on land? Well, we've got reptiles. Well, we rule out amphibians because of the amniotic egg. So that leaves the other end of the spectrum, amniotic egg, which could be potentially a bird. There are some mammals that have amniotic eggs. Okay, so it could be a bird or it could be a mammal. What else do we need to know that's different from that? From those, scales would be my best indicator. And to rule out a bird, I would say, and no feathers, because birds have scaly skin as well. All right. One way an ectotherm can warm its body is to, how do they maintain heat? Bask in the sun. When they sit in the sun and let the warmth of the sun heat their body up. In what way is the body plan of a snake different from that of a typical reptile? Snakes are legless, and most lack shoulder and pelvic. Well, actually, all of them lack shoulder girdles, and most lack pelvic girdles. Just means the bones that the legs attach to. The earliest known reptiles lived during the what period? So they showed up in the Mesozoic, and sorry, I don't know if you guys can hear all this scratching. The dog is trying to get out of its crate. So anyway, so reptiles showed up during oh, I inverted the spelling, sorry. Into what two major groups were the dinosaurs classified Okay, so remember dinosaurs were originally classified into two groups based on their hip bones. And we did that based on the fact that we thought their hip bones showed a relationship to, excuse me, to birds. And the first group was ornithischians. And the other group is the ones that we thought were more closely related to lizards, and they have what we call lizard hips. That's the Saurischian dinosaurs. What theories explained the extinction of the dinosaurs? That would be the asteroid impact off the Gulf, Chicxulub Peninsula, and the Gulf of Mexico. And that is a, whoa. Proper noun, Gulf of Mexico. And why did that cause the extinction of the dinosaurs? Because it kicked up dust that changed the climate of the planet. Volcanoes erupted, kicking up more gas that changed the climate of the planet. Most reptiles exchange gases through their lungs. Amphibians can exchange gases on their skin. They can do it in their throat. Reptiles, just their lungs. Oxygen-rich and oxygen-poor blood undergo the least mixing in the heart of a crocodilian. So crocodiles have a heart that is more similar to ours. It's a 4-chambered heart. Which reptile suborder would be most likely to burrow? So remember, we've got turtles, we've got rhynchocephalians, we've got snakes, we've got lizards. The burrowing ones are those amphisbaenans. Let's see, paste that in so I'll make sure I spell it correctly. Amphisbaenans. Amphisbaena. Should be Baena, not Bania. I think that's correct. Let me check. Give me a second to. Okay, Amphisbaenia is the suborder. All right, Amphisbaenia. All right. I will add. Oh, can't add that in my spell check. All right. One method snakes use to locate prey is to flick their tongue in the air and draw the tongue across the roof of their mouth. In this method, function of the tongue is to bring particles from the air into taste buds. Basically, it's like smelling or tasting the air. And your sense of smell is actually very close to your sense of taste. They both function very similarly. Your sense of smell works by particles in the air going into your nostrils. They get broken down by sensor nerves in your side of your sinuses, and you smell the chemicals that break down. Your taste buds work the same way. When something hits your tongue, it's dissolved on your tongue, and your taste buds on your tongue pick up the taste. Different areas of the tongue will link to different types of tastes, bitter, sweet, that sort of thing. So very similar function. If you ever have tried to eat something that's very flavorful when you have a cold, you have a head cold and you can't breathe, you'll notice a distinct lack of flavor from your food. It's not because you're sick, it's because your sinus passages are clogged up, and a lot of our flavor comes from the intermingling of the senses of our sinuses, our smell, and our taste buds. And one of the things that I heard about coronavirus is that people that have coronavirus lose their taste and smell. It starts affecting both, I think, which is kind of interesting. And I guess it's because it's affecting your sinus passages, how you process that. All reptiles reproduce by internal fertilization. Okay, when they reproduce, the males and the females physically get together, and sperm cells are exchanged from the male to the female. And during that process, the eggs are fertilized inside of the body. Okay. And most are oviparous. Oviparous, meaning they lay eggs and the eggs hatch. There are some that have eggs that are internal. They are ovoviviparous. So there's some snakes that give birth to live young. They keep the eggs inside the mother. Then baby snakes just come out of the cloaca. Difference between a reptilian egg and an amphibian egg is that reptilian eggs have reptilian eggs are amniotic and have a hard shell. Let's see, 28, Tuatara. That is the order Rhynchocephalia. If you give me a second, I'm gonna, just to be safe, grab that name so I don't misspell it. And the Rhynchocephalians are your Tuatara. That's the only extant member of that. There are some aquatic Rhynchocephalians that we have fossils of, so we know that they were around before, but Tuatara is the only one now. Let's see. Caimans and gavials belong to the order Crocodilia. So crocodiles, alligators, caimans, gavials are all crocodilians. Vertebral column exhibits the least flexibility among reptiles in which order? And that is the turtles, Testudines. Turtles, their backbone is fused to their shell, their carapace, so of course they can't flex it. An endotherm is an animal maintains its own body temperature. All right, the fact that Archaeopteryx had teeth in its beak and well-developed feathers covering its body suggests that Archaeopteryx was what we call a transitional species. Transitional means that it links two groups. It's evolutionary evidence that birds and reptiles are related. There's more evidence now to that, now that we've found dinosaurs that have feathers. And you could argue that Archaeopteryx is a dinosaur with a feather, but it's a transitional species. It's a link that unites two groups. Easiest way to distinguish a bird's egg from a reptile's egg is to look for what characteristic. Birds have hard egg shells. Reptiles have leathery shells. Okay, let's see. Yeah. Class Reptilia has, oh, you know what? That should be capitalized. Shame on me. All right, sorry. Class Reptilia has how many orders? So looking at all of the orders of reptiles that we know about, there are testudines, that's the turtles. And this is talking about extant. I should probably change that question to make sure it's extant. The crocodilians, that's the crocodiles, alligators, salmons, and gavials. The birds, oh, no, wait, do we not call birds reptiles? No, we don't, but they're part of the same group. We separate them out. It's a separate lineage, but that links also to order Rhynchocephalia, and then Squamata, which is the one that has 3 suborders, which are lizards, snakes, and the legless worm lizards. All right, so 4 orders. One of those has some suborders. Class Reptilia has 4 orders. Crocodilians, Rhynchocephalians, Squamata, and Testudines. The functions of the amniotic egg include which of the following? All right, so what are the things that amniotic eggs do? Amniotic eggs are basically a way of protecting a growing embryo. So let's see, functions are protection, they give them food, nutrition, they allow gas exchange, and they allow waste storage. I think that's probably it for the functions of the amniotic egg. Turtles are members of the order Testudines. This order is rare and combined to one country, New Zealand. Oh, goodness, having trouble selecting the area I want to put this. Oh, there we go. Rhynchocephalians are only found in New Zealand. What are the major characteristics of the skin of reptiles, and how do they differ from amphibians? Let's see. Reptiles have dry, scaly skin. Amphibians have moist, scaleless skin. Did I spell that wrong? Scaleless skin. Maybe that's not a word. Scaleless, unscaled. All right, well, that's not a word. Moist skin, lacking scales, better. All right, next. In reptiles, blank, all reptiles blank shed the outer layer of their skin. That's periodically. So there are some reptiles, part of this has to do with growing and having new skin. We shed our skin, but we lose it in little places. All reptiles will periodically do that. Let's see, how can I make this? Let's do this periodically. I'm going to undo on it. There are some that will shed it all at once. Some snakes will shed their skin all in one piece, and you'll see it laying there. Some lizards will shed it in patches. Little bits will come off. It's kind of like when someone gets sunburn. If you've ever seen that, and there's sunburn and the skin will peel off. As somebody with really pale skin, I've seen that several times. It's unpleasant, but you have little pieces of skin that will peel off as the skin dries out. Longer snouts in reptiles allow for a better sense of smell. So reptiles can smell more, they're better able to smell than amphibians. I don't want to say they smell better than amphibians because I've never smelled them both together to see. Reptiles have more or less vertebrae than amphibians. Reptiles have more vertebrae. Oh, that's not strike through, underline, better. All right, autotomy, losing a part of the body in self-defense, is an adaptation that is found in reptiles. There's some reptiles that will lose their tail. Guans will do that. Something attacks them and grabs onto their tail will pull off, and they unfortunately don't regrow it. In some groups with autotomy, like sea stars, we saw they would regrow an arm that they lost, but in reptiles, a lot of them will lose that body part and they do not regrow it. So don't ever pull, that happens in amphibians too. But don't ever pull the tail off of an animal just to make it do that. That's to save it from a real predator. A complete movement to land was made possible for vertebrates because of internal fertilization, amniotic egg, egg shell. Movement to land, if you're doing external fertilization, you need water. That's the thing that has to happen to make sure that the animal survives. You can have an amniotic egg, but the egg can be soft and swishy and therefore doesn't really help protect. So egg shell, I'm going to say that amniotic egg is what provides the hard external shell, or a leathery external shell. So let's say A and B is our best choice out of those. Let's see. Blank is the dominant sense in reptiles. Vision. Moving to land, vision becomes a much more important sense. Where is the nictitating membrane located? It is on the eye. It is an extra eyelid that keeps the eye moistened if you live on land. Unlike fish, whose eyes are always in water, or some amphibians that keep their eyes in the water all the time, reptiles moving to land, and some amphibians need an extra membrane to keep that eye moistened. A tympanum helps frogs to hear. The tympanum is basically, it's like an eardrum. It's on the side of their head, and when there's sound, it vibrates, and that's what sends signals to their brain, vibrates and sends signals to nerves inside their head that gives them a sense of hearing. Name 3 different systems that dump their contents into the cloaca. The cloaca is the combined excretory, waste, that's nitrogenous waste, digestive waste, that's solid waste, and reproductive. That's where eggs come from as well. So effectively, what's analogous to urine in us, feces in us, and babies in us all come from the cloaca. They all go through one opening in animals that have a cloaca. We see those in fish, we see them in amphibians, we see them in reptiles, we see them in birds, and we see them in a couple of mammals. So there are some mammals that still have cloaca. In Greek, what does amphibian mean? It means both lives. Amphibians live what we call both lives, meaning that they live on land and in water. They're aquatic and terrestrial. Tetrabod describes an animal that has 4 limbs. Let's see. Yeah, I think that's fair. Or descended from a four-limbed animal. Carboniferous period is sometimes referred to as the age of amphibians. That's when the carbon levels went up. We get a lot of tree growth, massive forests. What is ichthyostega? Ichthyostega is an early tetrapod ancestor. Let's say amphibian as well. Early tetrapod amphibian ancestor. So one of the first animals to make that transition, start making that transition to land. Amphibians live on all continents except, the only place you don't see amphibians is Antarctica. I should probably capitalize Antarctica and spell it correctly. All right, list examples of amphibian orders: Chordata, Anura, and Gymnophiona. All right, so examples: the chaudates would be a salamander. Anurans would be frogs. Frog or a toad. And to make sure I spell that right. And then for Gymnophiona, Sicilians. All right. How do frogs and toads differ? There's a lot of things we could list here. We'll go with a couple of the top ones. We went through a whole chart listing off those differences, but eyes, bulging, flat, near water, rear legs. There's a whole chart that's in the notes. If you want to pull that out, you can look and see what some of the differences are between frogs and toads. Toads are really a subclass of frogs, though. The blank animal is the first animal with a true tongue, and it is attached in the front for flipping. So that would be frog. Saw some pictures of that. List 3 ways amphibians get oxygen: their throat, through their skin, and from lungs. And that's why they have moist, slimy skin. Frogs have forward-facing eyes for stereo vision. Having eyes on the sides of your head means you see either side. That's usually the mark of a prey animal, something that's going to be looking around for things that are attacking it. Eyes in the front, better for tracking distance to something. Stereo vision, it's good for hunters and predators. What are chemoreceptors? Nerves that pick up chemicals. Signals. How do frogs and toads conserve water in dry conditions? Some of them will hibernate. They actually, oops, I spell that right too. And it seems reasonable. What is amplexus? A male anuran grabs a female around the abdomen to stimulate release. So in reproduction in frogs and toads, the male will grab around the waist of the abdomen of the female and kind of squeeze to trigger the release of the eggs. Why do frogs and toads make sounds? Territory, mating, and for defense, to give warnings to other members of the group. Oh, there's a predator coming. I need to shout out an alert. What are the parts of the amniotic egg and what are they for? So this goes back to when we discussed the amniotic egg, in the notes for reptiles. So let's see if we can go through the the amnion is cushion around the embryo. Allantois is, let's see, oh, sorry, let's do it this way. External choice is for gas exchange. Yolk sac is nutrition. And the embryo is the developing young. Okay, I think that covers that. Let's see. I will add here, let's say storing wastes, also part of that guy. All right, for a turtle, what is the carapace? I should underline all this business. So the carapace is the ventral shell made of fused spine and ribs, and the plastron is the dorsal shell made of sternum and dermal plates. And actually, this is also made of dermal plates. All right. Are there any poisonous lizards? So poisonous lizards references the fact that not toxins, not that they have toxins, but that they have some kind of chemical that is toxic. All right, so let's see. Here, the two of them are Gila monster and the Mexican beaded lizard. What are pit vipers and what is the function of the pit? Pit vipers are snakes, and pit glands are heat sensitive organs in the mouth. All right. Well, that covers it. That is everything. All right, so if you need a copy of this, just give me a shout and I can send you all the answers, or email it to you, or however works best. This is the answers for all of the questions on the review. And I think that is all, unless you happen to have a question. We'll be glad to listen to any questions. Nope, don't see any questions in group chat. So if you're good to go, I'm good to go. And let me know if you need anything.
Thank you.
Thank you. Have a great day.
You too. Bye.
Bye.